What's up guys, this is Kefis, and today we are doing a little bit of macro testing. And I thought, since you guys like the macros so much, I would do a little bit of like behind the scenes, maybe show you guys kind of how I do things. Thought that might be interesting. And also what makes this even more interesting is that we are testing out an entirely new build. It's new to 6.0 at least, because in 6.0 Blizzard adds for some classes these talents that kind of completely change how you play the class and how you do the rotation. And so today we are testing out what is known now as the Necroblight for the Unholy Death Knight. So it's like the Necroblight build. And basically I'll show you how this works. So you need two talents for this to work. The main one is Necrotic Plague, which was pretty useless in 6.0. It was pretty underwhelming compared to the other talents, but in 6.1 it got a pretty good buff. And on top of that, it makes things a little bit easier. So if you're someone like me who is visually impaired, easy is good. If you have less to focus on, that's better. What Necrotic Plague does is instead of using two diseases, Frost Fever and Blood Plague, it has one disease, which is Necrotic Plague, and it works a little bit differently. Now for Unholy, the rotation doesn't change that much because you're already Plague Strike already puts up both diseases with that one ability. With Frost, it changes up things quite a bit because you have to use two abilities to put the diseases up. But I digress. This still works great for Unholy because we also have Unholy Blight, which will put stacks of Necrotic Plague up without having to use Plague Strike. It's a 1.5 minute cooldown, but the cool thing is this adds stacks very fast. So when you use Unholy Blight, stacks build up very quickly get to max 15, and if you can keep Necrotic Plague up for the duration of the cooldown, you can do a lot of damage. Now you can also add Necrotic Plague with Outbreak and with Plague Strike, which are going to be in my macro. Basically I'm going to try to use Unholy Blight, Plague Strike, and Outbreak in a way that it's going to try to keep up Necrotic Plague as much as possible. That way I don't have to worry about recasting it. But I also have an extra, for a failsafe, I have an extra button with Plague Strike on it. Hopefully I won't have to use it very often, but in the event that Necrotic Plague drops off before I refresh it with my macro, I can use Plague Strike to do that. Now the thing about Necrotic Plague that makes it different from the normal diseases is that you actually can't just refresh it. What I mean by that is, normally if say you use Plague Strike, it puts up both your diseases, and then you use Plague Strike again, it'll refresh the timers of those diseases. That's not how Necrotic Plague works. If you use Plague Strike, you have 30 seconds with Necrotic Plague, and then if you use Plague Strike again, it just adds another stack. But the duration stays the same, so it's not going to go back to 30 seconds, which means that you have to play a little bit differently, but you can extend the time with Festering Strike. Festering Strike adds up to 6 extra seconds on the disease. So the macros are basically going to do like what the other macros did with the other video that I posted a little while ago. You guys really like that one. These are not all that different, they just change things up a little bit. We're not going to use Plague Leech anymore, obviously, because we're using Unholy Blight. And Plague Leech actually is not good with Necrotic Plague because it removes the disease, where you're actually trying to keep the disease on and build it up. So you don't want to use Plague Leech when you're using Necrotic Plague. You could use Plague Bringer because it'll make your Death Coils add stacks of Necrotic Plague, but I am testing out Unholy Blight because of how quickly it adds Necrotic Plague stacks. So we're going to see how this works. Basically I've already got the macros set up, and we're going to go ahead and cast, go to town on this target dummy here. Obviously it's going to bring up my undead dude. It's going to pop him up there, and we're going. We've already got Necrotic Plague up. We're already at 13 stacks. Check that out. We're already maxed our stacks out. So there you go. Now, obviously, like all these macros, they're not the most efficient things. They never are. They're macros. They're not smart, so you're not making choices. It's going to throw a lot of those, abilities off right off the bat. Like it's going to throw Outbreak, Unholy Blight, and a Plague Strike right off the bat, which isn't really the most efficient way to do things, but it will help to add stacks even more quickly. So that's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not necessarily the most efficient. But when you use macros like these, it's not all about efficiency. It's about being kind of lazy and making things a little easy. So that's kind of what we're going for here. Now we're doing 22k right now, kind of burst. It's taking care of everything though. It's empowering my demon. It's throwing the gargoyle out there at the beginning of the fight. It's everything except for Army of the Dead. It'll even do Empower Rune Weapon, and it'll try to hold off on that a little bit so that it's not wasting it. but that'll make it so that it'll cast it, you know, throughout your fight. That's basically what it's doing. Now, one of the other cool things about this build is that Necrotic Plague, when you add stacks, it spreads the disease to other targets within 8 yards, which means that you really don't have to worry about using Blood Boil anymore, because Blood Boil is what spread the diseases for AoE, for Unholy. In this case, you don't have to do that. Now, it's about to fall off here, and so what I'll do is when it becomes available here in a second, I will throw up a Plague Strike, and that puts Necrotic Plague back up. So you probably want to have an extra, but look how quickly it's building the disease up. Look at that, bam. So, you know, you might want to throw up an extra, you know, necrotic or Plague Strike on your action bar just as a fail-safe. And so, but yeah, you don't have to worry about having an AoE rotation because of the way Necrotic Plague works, which makes things even easier. So you can do the same rotation for single target as you do AoE, just throw a Death and Decay down every now and then when it's off cooldown, to add even more damage to the situation. And then obviously when you get down to 45%, you'll switch over to Soul Reaper and it'll do the same thing. So you have your Soul Reaper macro, which does pretty much the exact same thing, except it'll do Soul Reaper and make that a priority. So that's basically how this is working, and we're doing about, you know, between 19 to 21,000, 22 at burst, 19 as things slow down a little bit. It might go down a little bit more over time. They always do. Now again, it's off, so we'll have to recast that. If it's not on like constantly, like if you have a few seconds where it's off, it's not that big a deal. But I'm just kind of like wanting to see how it does, like how long. But you know, it's okay if it's not on like every single second. If you have a couple seconds where it's not on, you can just get to it when you get to it. Just try to keep it up. It's kind of the priority, but you know, whatever. So that's kind of how I play this game. Whatever. And so one cool thing now is making my job a lot easier when I'm testing out these macros. We're going to quit now. That was fun though. See, it just did Unholy Blight again, so that would have add stacks back. Now, as I was saying, Ask Mr. Robot, which is a really cool WoW site for all kinds of stuff, optimizing your character, and now they're kind of getting into the World of Logs thing where they're doing like DPS rankings. If you want to see how well you're doing and how well, if you're using macros, how well the macros are working for you, if you want to see how well you're playing even if you don't use macros, there's a new thing, and I'll show it on the screen here, where you can kind of check out where you stand. Basically, there's a benchmark here, as you can see, and you can pick out any like encounter and set the difficulty, and you can kind of see, like, based on your item level, where your benchmark is, and that way you kind of see where you fall under, if you're doing well or not. It's pretty neat. This is kind of how I'm testing out macros. It's kind of hard to compare a target dummy to a raid encounter, you know, because the raid encounters are different factors, movement, buffs, all kinds of stuff like that. But it seems like if I'm doing between 18 to 21k and I have an item level of 639, I think that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that, considering my Pally was around the same, and I don't play this all the time, and this is just the beginning. So I'm pretty happy with this new build. It's a lot easier. I like it a lot. It's more fun, and I think it's really cool with this expansion that Blizzard has added in these talents that kind of can change up how you completely play a class. Like, I'm also messing around a little bit with a Shadow Priest with the ability that makes it so you don't cast any dots, which is like a trademark for Shadow Priest. I mean, that's kind of like their big thing, and it kind of changes up that rotation completely, and I might do a video on that sometime. But for now, this is the Unholy Death Knight, the Necroblight build, and if this works out, I might go ahead and make a new macro video for this, and I might even recommend this over the other one, and you guys really like the other one, so keep your eyes open for this new build and these new macros. If it works out, I'll do some more testing, I'll think about it and see how it works out, and we'll go from there. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I love you guys are awesome. Thanks for all your support. Thanks for subscribing and checking out my videos and being a part of this channel. I'm going to try to add more content for you guys. I thought you'd just like to see a little behind the scenes, so thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. This is Kefis. Until next time.